Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and another new video. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that we have done some pretty popular Java bootcamps that have been watched by so many people. And one of the questions I get quite a lot is, how do we get started with development in Java? So if you don't know, my first open source contribution was in a Java project, the Kubernetes Java client by Red Hat middleware. And if you're someone who wants to get started with your open source journey or just want to build production ready applications, websites, games, or whatever you want to do using Java, this video is for you. So in this video, we'll make a full-fledged application tutorial and we'll use Spring Boot and we'll learn about the Spring framework, the features, and we'll build a nice little website using Spring Boot and MySQL because we need a database. You'll be like, Kunal, what about databases? We want to store stuff, for our website. So we'll learn about MySQL database, integrate that into Spring Boot easily. It's going to be pretty amazing. And also we'll learn about build tools. If you're working with development in Java, you will come across various build tools like Maven and Gradle. We'll learn about that in this tutorial as well. So nice little project we'll do that will set the foundation for some of the future videos I want to do in the Java development series, be that on Kafka and other things. And if you have any questions, make sure you leave those in the comment section below. All the resources for like the MySQL platforms and everything, the Java code, all the things can be found in the description below. So make sure you check out the links in the description below and if you want to try these out yourself. And let's get started. Okay, so let's get started. First question is, what is Spring Boot? Well, Spring Boot is essentially a framework to build web and enterprise applications in Java. And the way it's designed is that it makes it pretty easy with minimal configuration to create production ready applications. So your development process is basically simplified because it provides a set of tools and templates for you to use so that you as a developer can focus on writing the application code rather than dealing with setting up various configurations for so many components. So in simple terms, if I mention, then Spring Boot, you can think of it as like a ready to use toolbox for building your Java applications. So as a framework, it comes with various tools and conventions that streamline your development process. So one of the most popular ways by which you can use it is if you want to create, let's say, web applications or a microservice infrastructure or something like that. Spring Boot is pretty popular for that. And some of the most popular tasks are like HTTP requests, managing databases, and setting up various like configurations and managing dependencies and all these other things. So all of these things that we just mentioned that Spring Boot is pretty popular with, I'll try to incorporate it in one single project in this video, so you'll get a nice little idea of the power of this tool and how you can get started and explore. Now, one thing I want to mention is when you're starting with an open source project, let's say a really big project or learning a new technology or getting into a new domain of development, try not to be an expert when you're just getting started. Obviously, if you find interest, you can then be like, okay, now I have learned some basic stuff and made some projects and I know what it's all about, what the community is like. Now I can, deep dive and become an expert or get my certifications and stuff. So I'd say, for example, in this video, if this is your first introduction to Spring Boot, I'd recommend have fun. Okay, have fun, be curious, explore, and if you want to contribute to open source, then you don't have to be an expert. Just learn enough to contribute. If I say this, like, it's a big statement, but after watching this video, it is enough for you to contribute to Java open source projects. Because you will get stuck and you will find newer things. You'll be like, okay, this other project is using some other thing, that like Quarkus or something, that you may not ever have heard of. So you'll be like, okay, that's fine. We started with Spring Boot. We did not know anything about it, so we just got started. Now we are getting started with this another project and they have some new technologies being used. No worries, we'll learn and contribute while on the go. This is very, very important because otherwise people get overwhelmed. So to summarize, learn on the go. Learn while contributing. That is what I would like to mention before we get started. Okay, speaking of which, what are the prerequisites in order to get started with Spring Boot? What are some of the basic knowledge that you need to have? Well, Java first of all, but let's look at some of the other prerequisites. Okay, by the way, I'll leave all the links in the description below for the prerequisites. The first one obviously is Java development kit, because Spring Boot, it's a Java based framework, so you need the JDK installed on your system. This is a website. You can find the links in the description below for all the resources to get started. And it is always recommended to use the latest long-term support version of JDK. And you can see that Java 21 and 17 are available right now. 21 is the latest long-term support release for Java, so I'd recommend you can use that. The next thing you need is an integrated development environment or an IDE. IntelliJ IDEA is a good one for that. It's the most popular one, and you don't have to use it. It's not like you have to use this only, but this is the most popular one. That is why I'm recommending it as an IDE, and also it's free, so you can use the community version one. You don't have to pay or anything. You can use the free version. Should be more than enough for you to get started. All right. You also need build tools. So you can use Apache Maven or Gradle, because this is how our projects are going to be built. So you know how I mentioned about various dependencies and configurations. I'll talk more about the Spring Boot features in a minute, but in simple language, you can just tell your build tool like, hey, I'm making this project. I want MySQL installed or something like that. So in your XML file, you can just add in MySQL. When you run the build project, it will do everything for you. It's pretty simple. So Apache Maven, you can just download it. It's very simple. Just download this folder, okay, unzip it and add it to your path. That's it. Just add it to your path, and also set the Java home. I'm not going to show it in this video because I've already covered it, and I will tell you where I have covered it. So the Java introduction to Java installation video, in that I've covered how to set up Java home and how to, so if you see, you can just download it. That's it. And then you can go to install instructions. You can add the bin directory, which is in this folder that you unzip. There will be a bin directory. So it will be Apache Maven 3.9.5/bin. Just add it to your path environment variable. How to work with environment variables, if you're, let's say, that new that you don't know what path variable is, environment variable is, don't worry, I've explained this as well in my Linux terminal commands tutorial. That is very popular. It has crossed 1 million views. In that I have showed you some important Linux commands and how to set up path and environment variables, so you need to do that as well. Okay, next, the Spring Boot framework itself, you can install it as you can include it as a dependency in your build tool, so it will install it. So we don't talk much about that, but just in case you're interested, this is what the website looks like. You can learn more about it in detail, supports and samples and the Spring framework. So you can see, Spring for GraphQL, Spring security, data, so many other things. So that's basically about it. You can learn more about it on the website. I'll try to make it as easy for you to onboard and use these applications, because we're going to be using a bunch of stuff. We'll be making a website. We'll be using Spring Boot, MySQL, and Maven and all these other things. So don't want to overwhelm you that much, but it'll be fun. Now, lastly, we're going to use a database. So an open source data platform that you can use is Avon. Again, the links you can find in the description below. We'll be using MySQL, but you can see they have a bunch of stuff that they offer. You can see even for Apache Kafka, for Apache Flink, and for databases if you want to use, there's MySQL, there's Redis, there's PostgreSQL, Apache Cassandra is there, and then there's for analysis, OpenSearch, InfluxDB, Grafana is there, so many other providers, and you can also deploy it using like Kubernetes, infrastructure as code like Terraform, third-party integrations. So you can see the compliance and some of the other features like high availability and things like that. I'm recommending this because it's they're pretty good in terms of like the open source support and the ecosystem. It's very vast and pretty powerful. It's like fully managed. You're in control of your data because it's powered by open sourced services, and basically supports all the providers and all the toolings. And it's pretty simple to get started with. So we'll be using Avon, and yeah, if you want to check out the links in the description below, you can find the links to the platform. You can use my link and you'll get some, you can get some free credits and stuff. But yeah, for that, you can check out the link in the description below. And that was about the prerequisites. So I'm very excited. You can see a bunch of stuff we'll be using, but it'll be a lot of fun. And yeah. Now, one more thing I want to mention is about the Spring framework. Now, you may be confused. Okay, Kunal, what is the difference between Spring Boot and the Spring framework? And do you need the knowledge of Spring framework in order to get started with Spring Boot? Short answer is no. It's always good to have, but not really. You don't have to know that much. Like an expert, like what we'll be covering in this video is going to be more than enough for you to get started. But the real question, the doubt you may be having is Spring framework versus Spring Boot. What is the difference? So both the Spring Boot and the Spring framework, it's a part of the larger Spring whole ecosystem. And when we talk about Spring framework, as the name suggests, it's a framework, and it's used to build production ready Java applications. And Yeah, and as a framework, it has a lot of features and modules for so many other things like dependency injection, for your messaging, your databases, so on and so forth. Maybe Kunal, you said the same thing for Spring Boot. That is correct. Spring Boot is actually built on top of Spring Framework. But the thing is that Spring Boot has a lot of abstraction. So in simple terms, it will handle many things for you. But with Spring Framework, you have to do a lot of things manually, like configurations and dependencies and all sorts of things. You know, the quote I mentioned in the start, like it will, with Spring Boot, you only focus on writing your application and it will take care of everything else. So Spring Boot, Spring Framework, it's not like a versus thing. It's like Spring Boot is built on top of Spring Framework. You can use either of those to create production ready applications and all sorts of things, but Spring Boot makes it a little easier for you to do it. If you want more control, if you want to do everything by yourself, then you can use Spring Framework. But ideally, what is recommended outside in the real world as well is Spring Boot. Because think about it, right? You don't have to write the configuration code yourself. So like dependency management, application, like configurations and packaging and all sorts of things, Spring Boot will take care of it. And because Spring Boot is taking care of it, you can focus on writing your code. But if you're using the Spring framework itself, that's like more control you have, so you have to do everything manually. So if you want to develop web applications and microservices where simplicity is of priority to you and you just want to get your stuff out, I'd recommend using Spring Boot because it will abstract away a lot of things, offer you some boilerplate so you can focus on writing the business logic rather than worrying about all these other things. But if you're like a really big enterprise, you need fine-grained control over your applications and configurations and stuff, you have a lot of resources and all these other things, then Spring Framework is the choice to go. I've also seen people use both of them simultaneously. So they use Spring Boot to bootstrap the application pretty quickly, and then they use Spring Framework to offer like more customization and more complex. Okay, so let's get started with a simple project. I'll explain to you, the components and stuff and all the tools and like everything while we are creating this project, just so that you know how simple it is to get started with. First thing we have to check if we have Java installed. Looks good. Maven installed. Okay, looks good. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Spring Boot project. You can do it manually. You can do the command line like using mbn archetype, but we're going to make things simpler. We're going to do simple stuff. So you can use Spring Initializer. I can select that the project. I'm going to do Maven, language Java. This version is fine. com.example demo is fine. This is fine. Packaging jar is fine. Java version, this is okay. And I'm going to add a dependency. I'm going to do the web dependency. So this is basically used to create some basic web projects with Spring, and that's basically about it. You can use I'll show you in just a minute. You can add these dependencies and stuff manually as well. All the things I'm doing right now using Spring Initializer, you can do it manually as well. But we're going to use Spring Initializer just so that it makes our life a little bit easier. Generate, it has downloaded something. Let's see what that is. So here you can see demo.zip has been downloaded. It has been extracted, not a problem. I will open IntelliJ IDEA. And I will open a project, which is the demo project over here, desktop downloads demo, open. Let's see what it has created for us. So we have a source file which has, let's say, main Java. This is the main file, not a problem. We have a pom.xml file. This is the main file I want to show you. We don't need the build right now. It may look overwhelming, but it's really not. Okay, so don't worry. I'll explain you what these things mean. So this is my main, like this is a demo application Java. This is just normal Java file, not a problem. I'll write my code here. This is fine. This is the structure, what it looks like. The .maven over here, and this is the test folder where all my tests will go. Pom.xml. So pom.xml, I want to share with you what this is all about. This contains information about my project. So like what all dependencies are in the project. So let's say we have the Spring Boot starter web, right? So this is what I meant. It's going to go to this, let's say, URL or website or whatever online thing, a repository, and it's going to download this dependency. This dependency may have some files for us that you want to use. Similarly, if you want to use MySQL, you will add a dependency for MySQL over here so that you can use MySQL. And when I run the Maven command, it will work with it and it will download all the dependencies automatically, and it will, like, I don't have to manage it, Maven will manage it. And the simple stuff like version I've given, the name of the project, right? Description of the project, Properties mean which Java version you're using, the version of Maven, and all sorts of things. Okay, just the XML version of this file, encoding and stuff. Most of these things you can ignore, right? You don't have to add these in, but since it has created it for us automatically, so we don't have to worry about it. It's fine. Okay, so this is what I wanted to mention to you. Now, one more thing I want to mention is here you can see .maven directory. You will have all the dependencies like properties here. You can change the Maven path. You can go to your settings and you can go to build execution deployment, build tools, Maven. Here you can see using the Maven wrapper, you can point it to inbuilt one, or you can point it to the one that is like the one you downloaded. Everything is okay. Looks good? Okay, I'm trying to make things easier for you. So for simple stuff, like right now what we have just done is we have created a simple project. It has a simple dependency that we have installed, and we'll go to the terminal. You can write the maven installed, mvn install command and all sorts of things. But what we'll be doing is we'll be using IntelliJ IDEAs inbuilt, like this maven tool thing over here. So you can check out your profile over here, all the lifecycle you want to clean, you want to test, you want to install, you want to deploy, just with one click. It will do everything for you. See, just with one click, did everything. Build success, one click. So you can use mvn install command as well, but I'd recommend using the GUI when it makes life easier, so why not? And you can add in your own commands like we'll do over here shortly when I'll run the project. But what I want to do now is, Kunal, this is fine. And this is just a simple boilerplate to run the application, but we want to display a hello world. Let's say we run our web application on localhost, we go to /hello path and we want it to show hello world. How do we do that? Spring Boot, there's such thing known as a controller. So controller is used to handle HTTP requests. Create a new file. I'm going to call it hello controller. And I will just paste my code over here, simple code. So this is what it looks like, an annotation like REST controller. If you go over here, this is a Spring Boot application annotation. So if you want to learn more about annotations, I've already covered it in my Java bootcamp, but I can say Spring Boot annotations. Okay, so it's form of metadata that provides data about a program. Annotations are used for supplement information, and there are some core framework annotations, as you can see over here. Configuration, class level annotation, Spring Boot, like a component, the controller. So the controller is again a class level annotation which is used to handle HTTP requests, and repository, Spring Boot application. This is a combination of these three annotations, and it tells us that this is our Spring Boot application. So many annotations are available over here. Okay, so similarly we're using a controller annotation. It's telling us that, hey, this is actually defining like, okay, this is this file over here, this class over here is used to handle HTTP requests. Okay, and as you can see, I'm importing this class from where? From the dependency that I installed. So automatically these classes, the code that has been written in the dependencies, I am using it thanks to Spring Boot. I'm adding another annotation over here, get mapping, where I just add in, if you want to check get mapping, what it looks like, as you can see over here, get mapping, and this is again in this package, which is in that I got from and installed it via Maven. So it's saying when you go to the hello URL, return this thing. That's it. Run this function. If you have done Python, it's sort of like decorators, like in Flask. Not exactly similar, but if you want to talk about in layman terms, that's basically about it. Yeah, create a controller, add in a URL, get mapping. If you want to make a get request to /hello, it will return hello world. Simple. Have we done anything complex over here right now? No. I just created a project using the web UI. I imported it. It did everything for me. I don't have to worry about, every single thing in detail, because I just want to focus on getting started and making projects. These things, just basic information about the file, don't worry about it. The main thing I wanted to show you was dependencies, and here we have automatically added one dependency because we are using the stuff that is in that dependency. See, REST controller, get mapping, we're using all these things because we have added it in the pom.xml. And now we can run this. Let's see how we can run this. Okay, now that I have everything set up, I can go to Maven over here and I can see my demo project and I can run my Maven command. You can do it from terminal as well, but I can just say Maven Spring Boot run, enter. You can check all your dependencies and stuff over here as well. Plugins and the lifecycle. You can run directly commands from here, like if you want to clean your repo, you want to test, do all sorts of things. I think that's running now. Started the application and it's running. So we can go to localhost and see. If we go to localhost/hello, it should return hello world. Localhost 8080 hello world. We have just created a web application using Java. That's it. So simple, right? Let's do a nice bigger project with like MySQL and see how these components work and do a nice little project. It will be making more sense. Okay, so that was how easy it was to get started, but now let's look at a more real world project. We'll use a database and connect it with a Spring Boot application, and it's going to be pretty cool. So first things first, we need a database, so we're going to use Avon. It's very easy to get started with. You can go log in for free and you can try it out for free. You can use the MySQL one for free as well for the free plan. So I can just go select a new service. There are a bunch of available over here. I'm going to select MySQL. Okay, I'm going to select the free plan. And when I select the free plan, I'm going to select the region. So I'm in Europe. I can select Europe. I'll select England. That's fine. And the free one, that's okay. And I can just give it a name. I can say MySQL, whatever name I can give it. So I can select the name. I can say MySQL Kunal. And that looks good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say create free service. Cool. Now if I zoom in, you can see in my portal, in the console, I can see MySQL Kunal. It's building, and when it's built, you will see that it's like turned green. And here I have all the connection information. This thing is important because we'll use it to connect to our application, but you can see how easy it was. Simple. It took me like 30 seconds, no less than that, right? So pretty easy to create a MySQL, database over here in Avon, and yeah, free for you to use as well. So that's pretty much about it. Very easy. So now the next step is we're going to create our Spring project. So same thing we're going to do. We're going to select the language Java. I'm going to select Maven, and the version we can select is 3.1.5. That's fine. And the group name I want to give is, I can say io.avon.spring.mysql. Artifact demo, name is demo, description I can say Spring Boot, and MySQL, Avon Spring MySQL.demo, jar 17 is fine, and then dependencies that I need to install. So Spring Web is here, which is okay. We need the Spring Web one, but we are now working with a database as well. So we need Spring Data JPA, so persistent data in SQL stores. We need that one, and we also need for MySQL driver. Don't think anything else is needed, so I'm just click on generate, and we have our file over here, demo.zip. I can open it in IntelliJ IDEA. Open. Open. Same thing as before. Now we have, see, our dependencies here. Amazing. Pretty cool stuff. So we have MySQL dependency, Spring Boot starter, web, all sorts of things. Okay. Cool. Source, main, Java, demo application, just the same thing as before. All right, now let's see how we can connect MySQL to it. Back in my Avon dashboard here, I can see in my console that it's running. So that's pretty easy and it was free. I also didn't add any credit card, so you can get started without that if you check out the links in the description below. But what we need to do now is we have to add this Avon, like the nice little MySQL database that we have to our local project over here. How do we do that? When we talk about Spring Boot, it by default comes with the H2 database. That's the default database. If you're using a cloud service like this, we have to add the connection attribute. So you can see we're getting so many information over here, like the password and stuff. So one of the ways by which you have to connect the cloud-based platform to your local repository is under this resources section. Okay, and here I will go to application properties. Right, so in the application properties, I'm going to add in a bunch of things. Let me show you. So here I have added the Hibernate DDL auto update and the URL, the username and password. Now you'll be like, okay, Kunal, these things are fine. I'm saying this is like Avon specific stuff, so I have to add the Avon data that I have over here from my connection information into it. So if I talk about my database, then this is the database name, default DB. I'm just going to add this over here. My host is this one, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add in my host. Over here, and my port is 14503. I'll add in my port over here. Username and password is needed, so username is this, and password I'll just copy. Don't try to copy my password because I'll remove it after it's over, and everything else looks good. So that's one of the ways by which I have added all my Avon information for my cloud database that is running with my local repository. So you can think it's pretty much boilerplate, and I just added the information that is in the website over here for my connection, and now we can connect it. One more thing I want to mention is you have to add this value to none. It's like the recommended way to do it after your database goes into production. Okay, now in MySQL we need tables. So we need to have tables and we specify some of the properties of the table, some of the fields. How do we do that? So we have to do that using our Java code. And one of the things we can use is, because we have installed these dependencies, for MySQL there's an entity we can use. So I'm going to create a user file, okay, and I'm not going to write the code like line by line because the video will be too long, but I'll walk through it and I'll leave the description in the description below. I'll leave the code, and so that you can check it out yourself and you don't skip on anything. So the whole idea is that when we're using Hibernate, it's going to translate this into our MySQL database, right? So as you can see, it's an entity of a public like class user, ID, generate value. So you can see it has an ID, it has a name, it has an email, and some functions just get the ID, set the ID, so getters and setters, if you have seen the object-oriented programming playlist, for the name and for the email. Very simple. So entity, as you can see, available over here, and that's pretty much about it. Cool. So Hibernate is going to use this and going to create our MySQL table. Now it can be anything. You can have like if you're doing a project on, let's say, movie recommendations, or you can have like movie name, movie review, and things like that. But we're going to use a simple user which has an ID, name, and email. For example, you have a group of classmates or roll number, marks, and stuff like that. You can add in. One thing I didn't mention is what is this strategy is equal to generation type identity. This is how you set primary keys. So even for MySQL does not allow creating tables without primary keys for security reasons. That is why we have added this over here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a repository interface so that it will hold all these users for us. So I'm going to create a new Java class interface. I can call it user repository. It's going to have this information over here. I'm just going to say import this user class, extends the CRUD repository of we have our the types over here, user and integer. This is basically going to be auto implemented by Spring. They're going to take a look at this interface, and CRUD, if you don't know what it means, it's for create, read, update and delete operations. The next thing I want to do is, now I want to handle HTTP requests, and you know what we have to create for that: controller. So I'm going to call it a main controller. It's going to have this file, just added some URLs over here. Now let's go through it. Again, I'm not going to type individually every line because it will be time consuming, and since you're watching a recorded tutorial, you can directly jump on what I mean, and again the code and everything is in the description below. So this is again an annotation. It means that this class is basically a REST controller. So at class level, I'm telling what this class is all about. And here, as you can see, we have the path as demo. It basically means the URL starts with /demo, and this thing over here, the user repository is basically this thing, the bean that starts with user repository. So automatically Spring will convert this into smaller case user repository variable. So this is auto generated by Spring, and this is what we're going to use to handle our data. Now we have the post mapping and get mapping. What this basically means is that this is only for post requests over here, and let's see what this annotation basically contains. So it's pretty simple stuff. Now we're adding a path add base just for post mapping. So this is our post request. We're going to create a new user. So new user, set name, set email, and then save it in this variable over here, and then return it. That is why we have the response body over here, meaning that we are returning the type user, which is a response, and the request param over here is the parameter from like the get or post request. Okay, similarly we have the mapping, and this is going to return a response body. So it's going to return a JSON or an XML with all the users that you want to get. So user repository.find all the users and get all. So if you go to this /all URL, it should list all the users. If you go to /add URL, you should be able to add a user. So we're adding a user, and it's pretty much about it, just 20 lines of code. All right, so controller is set. Let's move forward. Okay, now we need to create an application class. We already have one over here, demo application, and it's already been created. So not sure if you have to add anything else over here. If you didn't already know, we already covered it. This is like the entry point of the Spring Boot application. We saw about this annotation that it consists 3 other annotations, which is the configuration, enable, auto configuration, and component scan. And this is where the application starts. Like, this is the Spring Boot application's entry point. So all the component scanning and configurations and everything, that the auto configuration mechanism that happens, and it's the entry point of the application, if you will. This is like a simple boilerplate, like how we just started. And this main method that we have over here, it's going to use the Spring Applications Run method, which is going to be used to launch the application. Okay, and this entire application we have just built, it has been built on Java, so you don't have to worry about any underlying, like any other dependencies or infrastructure problems or as such, anything like that. I think that's pretty much about it. I think we can run the application, and we can just summarize. This is where it stores all our users in our interface, and this is the user type, so it will create a type of this main controller, which is for URLs. So I have 2 over here, which is add and all, and let's try to run this. Let me run this. I'll just go to Maven, Spring Boot run. So simple it is. Application should be up and running now. Started application, that's good. I can go to my project. I can say curl localhost 8080 demo all. It should show empty right now. That looks good. And I can do the same thing. I can add in a new user. So demo add, and I can add in some names. I can say Kunal Kushwaha. Email is equal to, I can add in kunal@xyz.com. That's it. So one person has been added. Now I try to get all the people who are added. So it's showing me one person added. We're using the MySQL database in cloud and it looks good. I can add another one, Rahul. Rahul Rana. Let's see if it shows both Kunal and Rahul now. Yes, Kunal Kushwaha with ID 1 and then Rahul Rana. How cool is that? Nice. So that's basically how it works, and we're using our online, nice MySQL, how easy it was to get started with Avon, and we learned about Spring Boot, we learned about all these files, controllers. I think the next step would be for you to explore, play around with it. I'd say explore the Avon platform. So if you go to Avon's home, over here, and you create a new service, I'd recommend play around with it. You can check out the links in the description below if you need some like free credits and stuff. And yeah, create your own projects. I'd say try Postgres. We'll do some, if you want me to do videos on any one of these, let me know in the comment section below. You can do Apache Kafka and Grafana. I also recommend playing around with initializer. Try not to, many times people think, okay, if we have more control and stuff, we deliberately try to make things complex, we will learn effectively. No, these are just tools enough for you to get your work done, for you to contribute to open source, build projects. If you do run into an issue, like always, never skip the basics is what I say. Tools keep on changing, new library frameworks keeps on changing. I recommend also checking out the Spring Boot, documentation to learn more about it, to learn more about annotations and stuff. If you want to learn more about these object-oriented programming concepts, you can watch my object-oriented programming playlist. But lastly, I'd just say, yeah, one more thing, I'm happy to give you some exclusive swag. So if you learned something from this video, you can use this entire tutorial, follow it step by step, and create your own project. That's step number 1. You can use Avon. All the links can be found in the description below. And share what you learned. Share the project that you created on socials. Tag Avon, tag We Make Devs. You can tag me, and we'll select a few winners. We'll give you some exclusive swag, and it'll be pretty cool. So if you want to win some nice swag, you want to join the Learning Public Initiative, you learned something from this video, I'd recommend build something quickly. As you can see, it was so easy. In like 10 minutes, you can make something. Share it on socials, tag Avon, tag We Make Devs, tag me, and wait to get your swag if you're lucky. But yeah, lastly, any questions or any requests for further videos? I know people were requesting Kafka tutorials. Let me know in the comment section below. I'm happy to do that. Final reminder, all the description links are to the resources that you can check out. But yeah, have fun, and also find open source projects. I'll make another video on Java open source contributions, more like a guidance video. But till then, have fun, play around with it, take part in the giveaway, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.